6255 1206. Breakfast with Stephen Cenatiempo on 2CC.
Well, unfortunately, we are still talking about the rise of anti-Semitism in Australia. You would hope that all of the commentary and events that have happened, particularly over the last 12 months, but certainly over the last 16, would have woken people up to themselves, but it hasn't. Australian businesswoman and philanthropist Cathy Shand has now quit as chair of the Sydney's Writers' Festival. She's warned that this year's festival may not be a safe and inclusive space for all attendees. She's a prominent Jewish Australian. She's resigned from the organisation, with the decision reportedly being sparked by a disagreement over the views set to be presented about the current conflict in the Middle East. To talk to us about this, we're joined by the CEO of the Australian Jewish Association, Robert Gregory. Robert, good morning.
Morning, Stephen.
The depths of this are now getting out of control. I mean, the fact that we've had a prominent Jewish Australian have to resign, or feel that she has to resign from the Sydney Writers' Festival, because even this is not a safe place for Jews in Australia at the moment.
Well, I think Australians are getting sick of this issue being inserted everywhere, particularly in the arts. And the fact that Cathy Shand feels she needs to resign, she's been with the organisation for 12 years, so I don't think she made this decision lightly. So I think that the festival has obviously made some terrible decisions.
Because, I mean, these writers' festivals always tend to be a hotbed of left-wing thinking, but when it extends to... I wouldn't attend one of these things generally because I have no interest in a lot of the topics that are being discussed, but if it's now getting to the point where people don't feel safe, we've got a whole other problem on our hands.
I think that's a really good point, and the question needs to be asked, should taxpayers be subsidising these festivals? Because, as you mentioned, this has happened in writers' festivals across Australia. There's been similar issues in Melbourne, in Perth, in Adelaide, so it's a spreading issue. It seems like, you or I may not want to attend these festivals, but a bunch of people do.
Yeah.
A bunch of what some people would consider a lot of elite people. So why do taxpayers need to fund these festivals, particularly if groups are now feeling excluded?
But this now opens a bigger question here, and we've all seen the disgraceful attacks, the firebombing of synagogues and daycare centres and arson attacks on cars and graffiti and those kind of things. How deep is this going, and what other incidences are Jewish Australians facing out there? I mean, we know that there seems to be this fear of, kids are afraid to wear their uniforms to school, for instance, and we hear these stories, but what do you see on the ground?
Well, we're certainly seeing those incidents. So all Jewish sites have to be protected like fortresses. Preschools have armed guards, which is something shocking to Australians. Yeah. And, people are scared of physical attacks. But I would have thought that something like a writers' festival would be considered a place where people could just go and enjoy it without having to worry about these issues presenting themselves.
The problem I really see with this is here was an opportunity to have a fair income debate about the conflict in the Middle East, because these things are worth discussing now, and people will come from opposite sides of the fence, and you should be able to have a friendly dialogue. Maybe friendly is not the right word, but at least an amicable dialogue about these things. If a writers' festival is not the place to do that, where is?
Exactly. I mean, there's plenty of Jewish authors and not Jewish authors that would present an alternate opinion that, if they were included, it could really spark a debate. But if they're just going to present one side, then it's just a bit of a talk fest, and what's the point of it?
Aside from this issue, we saw the news this morning that one of the nurses from Bankstown Hospital is now being charged. Are you concerned that it took as long as this?
I mean, well, this is now before the court, so I wouldn't want to comment too much on the case, but there were concerns in the community that it was taking too long. Charges have been laid now against one of the nurses. I think they'd be expected against the second nurse. So now it's a question for the court. We know in the past and recently they haven't handled these type of cases with the severity they should have. So let's see what the courts do.
A lot of what we've seen from government following on from the attacks on the 7th of October 2023 has been too little too late. But is the Jewish community at least getting do you get the sense that a bit more action is now starting to happen? I mean, governments and law enforcement agencies are taking it a bit more seriously than they might have 12 months ago?
It does feel that way. Some people cynically suggest that an election is in the wind, so now it's being taken more seriously. But hopefully this lasts, and hopefully we can stop these attacks happening, because we've seen a whole spate, particularly in Sydney and Melbourne, synagogues burned down, daycare centres attacked. So, I mean, it should have been taken seriously right after October 7. The ugly scenes we saw at the Sydney Opera House should have been taken seriously, but hopefully, at least now, the government is starting to take it more seriously.
Yeah, let's hope that continues. Robert, always appreciate your time. Thanks for joining us this morning.
Thanks, Stephen.
Robert Gregory, the CEO of the Australian Jewish Association. It is almost